right. That is a point that a number of prominent Democrats have raised. We're very big liberals, and no less than Mark Cuban telling, well, I think you have to see this in a unique way here. But what Eric Bolling discovered in checking with Cuban is that he does see health care as again, a human right. Take a look.
You, I've read, said healthcare should be a right. Can you please explain that?
Sure, and not all healthcare should be a right. What I've said is every single person in this country faces a genetic risk. We all are in the genetic lottery. We're going to get sick at some point. Nobody dies healthy. And given that that's a shared risk, along with the idea that we all can lose the life lottery, you know, the space station toilet could fall on your head. You could be in an accident. We can all be in that wrong place at wrong time and suffer a serious injury or life-threatening injury. So what I've said is for chronic illnesses and serious and life-threatening illnesses, that's a risk that should be shared by all of us. And, you know, that should be a right for coverage.
So who pays for that, though, Mark? I understand what you're saying. Well, it's a very nice policy. Hey, I love to give free stuff to everyone, too. But that is, you know, you're talking about massively expensive health care. Well, you mean you can walk into an emergency room and we all pay for it? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, no, we all pay for it. Look, when somebody's sick, everybody you know is going to get sick at some point, and not everybody's going to be able to pay for it. So right now, whether it's walking into an emergency room, whether it's not being able to hold a job because your cousin, your brother, your sister, your mother, your daughter, your son is sick, et cetera, or somebody was in an accident, we all pay for it. And because the only way that it's going to work where, you know, we can have a productive well, that's not even the right way to say it. We all share these risks. Right. And the best way to deal with shared risks.
Let me get to this, though. So you're basically saying the government has to provide a single-payer system for catastrophic health care.
And even less than catastrophic health care, for chronic illnesses and serious injury as well. So the answer is yes, single payer for those. Everything else can be absolutely free market.
How does it hit the budget? Where's the pay for it? I mean that's quite a program.
It's a great question. Right now, we're paying for taxes. Now, one thing I would change, I would take the insurance companies out of the equation. I don't know in the healthcare, whether it's Obamacare, whether it's Trump care or don't care, whatever you want to call it. I don't think the insurance companies solve any problems or actually deserve to be in the mix. And so we're already paying into insurance companies. We're already paying for various types of health care. We're paying in local and state taxes to take care of paying for hospital programs, paying for emergency room programs. I forget the exact name of the program. We're paying for it anyway. So if you take the insurance companies out of the mix, then really the arbitrage is the 20% plus profit margins of the insurance company versus the inefficiencies of the government. And using new technology and using new approaches, can we reduce the inefficiencies of the government to less than the insurance company's profit margins? And I think the answer to that is yes.
Okay. Well, so the conservative answer to that is absolutely not, because that sounds like a Bernie Sanders socialist program. I don't want to get too deep into it, but let's talk a little bit about what's next on the horizon for the Trump administration. The next big political policy thing he's got to deliver is tax reform. Now, you're an investor. You watch the stock market go up and down based on what's going on with healthcare, what's going on with the potential for tax reform. Where do we stand on that? Now, are you okay with a very substantial tax cut for corporations and individuals?
Yeah, I mean, substantial is all relative, right? Would I like to see our corporate tax rates be a lot more competitive so we have fewer inversions? Absolutely. You know, when I was working with Secretary Clinton, she wanted me to go out and talk to businesses about her tax programs, and I wouldn't do it because she wouldn't commit to reduce corporate taxes. I think that's critical. Should they be 15%? No. 20 to 25%, somewhere in that range? Absolutely.
And individual taxes as well. You're all right with lowering those?
Yeah, I'm all right with lowering individual taxes. Honestly, I'm okay with the tax rates that I have. I think people in my tax bracket, there's no reason to cut our taxes. So, for those that are making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a yes, there's a lot of great reasons to cut their taxes.
So Mark Cuban agrees with Donald Trump on taxes and with Bernie Sanders on health care.
No. Don't put me on the same as Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders wants all health care to be a right. That's not what I said. I said for chronic illness and catastrophic injury, yes. Everything
the
else should be
most
free market.
expensive part of healthcare. You want government to be part of that, but then again, you're willing to say taxes should come down. I guess it's that conservative viewpoint where if you lower taxes, let people keep more of their money.
No,
the
see,
economy
where I
will
would
grow.
disagree with you, Eric, I'm taking the entrepreneurial viewpoint. What I'm saying is there's a technology is coming down. A lot is changing. And so in the past, we looked to insurance companies to act as the intermediary and manage this whole process for us. They had a profit margin. They had their own inefficiencies. They had their own goals, right? I think that we're going into a new age where there can be a conservative government effort to be a lot more efficient, to implement technology so that we can be, as a government, more effective.
All right, Mark, I only have a couple minutes very quickly. Can we talk about the wiretaps? This is really has been blowing up over the last few days. Where do we stand on this? Can we find out exactly what's going on? Is there an ability for us to find out exactly whether they're surveilled, whether it was legal or not? How?
It's really easy. President Trump says, I want to take a look at this. And if he thinks it doesn't impact national security, he says, you know what? I'm going to declassify it. Here it is for all Americans to see. Story over.
All right, Eric Bowling with me right now. I don't know the story over there. On the math part of being okay with big tax cuts, right? And then yet, all these rights in healthcare paid for. How does that add up?
I think it adds up to massive increase in the deficit. I mean, unless, you and I would probably agree that the lower taxes would inspire growth and spark growth and a growth economy.
You must buy that, right?
I think that part is the part he buys into. Otherwise, you're going to add literally trillions to the deficit over the course of time.
I'm wondering, too, this happy that healthcare was shot down, or that the Republican shot at healthcare was shot down. You kind of expressed that earlier today, that we don't appreciate the magnitude of what the Republican Party just avoided, right?
Yeah, can you imagine, Neil, and we did the math, we saw the CBO scoring, some of Trump's largest and most important voting blocks, 50 to 64 and 65 and older, middle to lower income, would get destroyed under this bill. They would go multiples of what they're paying.
They would have been seeing it around the midterms.
And so around midterms, next summer, with the town halls, when all these congressmen are going up in front of their constituents, and they're going to have the same thing that the Democrats had in 2008, 2009, I think they would have been a disaster for Republicans. So my view is, here's what likely will happen. Obamacare is going to start to implode upon itself. We all agree on that. Right? Trump can come in and help the people who are losing coverage and say, hey, here's a fix. Here's a Band-Aid to fix until we give you the replacement that will work a lot better and a lot cheaper. The problem with that bill, Neil, they did nothing to reduce the cost of health care. Nothing at all.
The better the wounds they're licking now than the bigger wounds they'll be licking later.
Risk losing the House.
How do there are going to be differences, as we know, even among Republicans on the tax cuts, right? Some want them paid for, some want a border tax, some don't. But there are a lot of divisions there. What do you think Republicans do on that, and what do you think the president's message will be to them?
Again, this is the fight going back and forth on the Republican side. Believe it or not, it's almost like you have three parties going on. They got to get it together. I think everyone towards the end of the day will get together because it's tax reform, and it's well overdue. 30-something years since the last time we had a massive.
So don't miss this shot.
They can't miss the shot.
Exactly right.
This is it. I mean, you've had 7 years, 8 years to get this thing together. You don't want to miss on your two major legislative pushes.
You don't want to screw that up. All right, Eric, thank you very, very much. Our host of Catch It In is in for a rally. Of course, the 5. All. All right, we have a lot more coming up here, including the read right now from these protesters who probably kind of have the same message, except they're protesters for Donald Trump. In fact, they're not protesting. They're gathering to celebrate the fact, in Rhode Island at least, the Trump agenda is alive and well. No doubt so, too, they hope, are those tax cuts. One of the principal ralliers there after this. You could have almost seen this happening in Providence, Rhode Island, where they're rallying for Donald Trump and his agenda. This was arranged prior to the healthcare fireworks yesterday, and now groups protesting them acted up in Providence right now. Those for Donald Trump, those against Donald Trump, and so this is turning into a bit of a heated affair here. So far, there's certainly no violence. A lot of people in each other's faces here. But again, what started out as a rally to make America great again has turned out to encourage protesters against Donald Trump, who are equally convinced he's not making America great again. So we'll keep an eye on it. And one of the organizers for today's march on behalf of Donald Trump will be speaking with us shortly. Which brings us to an ex-guy says that everyone has got to kind of calm down, get past the heated rhetoric back and forth of Emanuel Cleaver, Democratic Missouri congressman, a preacher by training. I always like to say that because he kind of steps back and avoids a lot of the agitations. Congressman, very good to have you.
Good to be with you.
All right, I'm sure you're relieved that the Obamacare remains in place. There's talk, though, that it's just a matter of time before it potentially starts unraveling, just because the costs associated with it have spiraled, and the means by which to pay those costs are limited. What happens now, do you think?
Well, if we can somehow begin to move some of the toxicity out of Washington, we should do what we probably should have done years ago, and that is to sit down with both sides, some kind of a committee, and try to make repairs to the Affordable Care Act. There's no question that there are parts of that bill that are flawed, and that's usually the case with anything that we approve. But I think, number one, I was one of the people who said, along with others, that Democrats don't need to go and do an end zone dance. We don't need to dance an end zone. The issue is, how can we make sure that we do what Donald Trump said in his campaign, which was to insure every American? And that's a possibility. It would, have to be a public option. But I think that if President Trump wants to meet with Democrats and Republicans, try to get a consensus, I think the interest is there to do it.
Yeah, but you talk about the toxicity in Washington, Congressman, and we're looking at what's happening in Providence, Rhode Island, where it was supposed to be a rally on behalf of Make America Great Again and Donald Trump, and the protesters come out to protest them. I think the toxicity is alive and well in the country, don't you?
No question about it. I asked a question yesterday of some of my friends in Congress. Look, are we infected by what's going on out in the country, or have we infected the country? I'm not sure which one is causing all of this polarization, but it's not good. Look, I have a good friend, Kevin Yoder from Kansas, over across state line. I was scared to death. I'm so glad they pulled the plug on the bill, because I thought if he voted for it, it was going to give ammunition to my side to come after him. And of course, I'm not going to campaign against him because he's a friend. But I think I've seen what happens when you vote for something that doesn't make it, because that bill will never have made it out of Senate. Ike Skelton left the U.S. Congress after chairing the Armed Services Committee because he voted on cap and trade. And even though the Senate didn't take him up, the vote was there, the record was there, and it was used against him to defeat him.
The next measure, we're told, that tax cuts. Republicans still licking their wounds are told, and being told, we're hearing, look, that you got to do. You got to do big ones, and you can't quibble over the details, even talk about revenue neutral and all that. You just got to get these things done, because our very majority, Republicans talking about where they stand in the House and Senate and with the White House, is imperiled, if not. What do you think?
Well, I do think we need to do tax reform, and I do think we need to deal with the corporate tax rate. I don't think we ought to, do it to the point where it imperils the country. If you look across state line in Kansas, they did just wholesale tax cuts, and now the